in honor of William Mackey Jr., the late great attorney Alton Maddox, Amos Wilson, El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz, the late great original Mackey's member, Brother Hassan, Gil Noble, Louis Ray Rivera, Minister Khalid, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, Professor George Simmons, Renoble Rashidi, Miss Leola Maddox. And every time you turn around, one of our own is passing away and leaving. Tito Jackson, Frankie Beverly, James Earl Jones. And I'm going to tell you a story about James Earl Jones that Professor Mackey used to tell us. Professor Mackey owned a coffee shop on the Northeast Side in the early days. And he used to say, he said, everybody from Morgan Freeman, James Earl Jones, Portier, all these folks, before they got their Hollywood connection, they were just as radical, conscious, but as soon as they got that first movie deal, Professor Mackey said they left and they never came back. As soon as they got that money from them Jews in the entertainment industry, and they start getting their movies and this and that, they never came back. I want to thank the late great Professor Mackey for telling them stories. That's why we keep his name alive. So for the people that came out, give yourself a great big hand. In honor of Miss Leola Maddox, who worked in Teaneck, New Jersey, she had an old car, good mileage. And she would come from Teaneck, and she would drive all the way to the United African Movement, because she believed in bringing people to the lectures and the UAM and having the lectures and the speaker come and people talking and giving information and laughing and just talking, and we listened to the lecturer, and she used to eat her dinner in the UAM. So we never want to forget Sister Leola Maddox and Professor Mackey and Dr. Ben Pavone. So that's why we continue through thick and thin, and we always salute for the people that come and support the Mackey's group. Now we're going to bring the camera over to the Amos collection. This is in honor of Amos Wilson and Brother Sababu, African World Info Systems. So Brother Sababu, who is running on fumes, still trying to keep the great work of Amos together. We have the Amos Classic, Blueprint for Black Power. We have Sababu's latest in honor of Amos, The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat Toward a Reclamation of the African Mind. We also have The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination, Issues of Manhood in Black and White, African-Centered Consciousness versus the New World Order, The Falsification of African Consciousness, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child, and Awakening the Natural Genius of Black Children. That is the Amos collection. And we give you an added book, Distorted Truths, The Bastardization of African Cosmology, S.K. Damien. And also, I never want to forget our good friend and comrade, come out of Marcy Project, Louis Ray Rivera. And when Professor Mackey left us too soon, Louis Ray took up the mantle. And Brother Hassar, Brother Colvin and all of us would come down, and it was just a few. And Louis Ray took up the mantle, and he would come down here, and he would talk for hours. I mean, oh my God, Louis Ray. And we would walk him home. He only lived on Jefferson and Bedford. And he would talk for another hour and a half, and we was on 4 blocks. At 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, we're still out there talking on the corner. So we want to salute Louis Ray in this classic Jazz in Jail. So I have some other publications for the listening audience and the YouTube audience to get the book, get your books and get your reading together and get your information. In honor of Big Harold, the transfer agreement, the untold story of the secret pact between Third Reich and Jewish Palestine, and you hear everything about Palestine and all this and that, guys, and get this book. They still can't stand Edwin Black. Max Dumont, in honor of Louis Ray and Truss Graham, Jews, God, and History. And when you read this publication, I'm only on chapter 4, but you find out these people got a habit of creating stories and creating events in history. And they know but a damn lie. And I want to thank Max Dumont. They create dates and times and have no kind of historical records on it and expect us to believe it. Our Gang, Jewish Crime and the New York Jewish Community, 1900s and 1940s. And you have not seen crime. The Bloods and the Crips and all that ain't got nothing on the Italian gangsters, the Jewish gangsters, the 5 Points at City Hall. They got nothing on the Bowery Boys. Read about crime in America. Dr. Ben, in honor of Dr. Ben, Black man of the Nile Adams family. We want to honor Dr. Ben for this book. I'm stumbling and I find this book, African Slavery in Latin America and the Caribbean. And every time you turn around, it's saying some silly study on reparations. They must not be getting these books. They got to be out their mind. You got to have another study. There's so many books. Without Sanctuary. Linda, zoom in to this, and you see the crowds of a black man being hung. There's another one with his pants hanging down below in North Carolina. Now, why would they pull his pants down after they strung him up? Perverts. Another one being hung. Another one being hung. Another one being hung. Another one being hung. And if you ever go to Baltimore, they go 3 being hung. If you ever go to Baltimore to the great Museum of Blacks in Wax, they have jars where they took the skin and used a razor blade to see how many layers, like an onion, and they would cut your skin. And if you would have that deep melanin, they would steady pull the onion layer and see how many layers of melanin before your skin start turning white. And they even had a picture of a man's private part in the jar. I want to thank the people at the Great Black Wax in Baltimore. They don't have that in the Museum of African American History on the barbaric stuff that they did. And all they got to do is run this nonsense. We got another study. David had the nerve to have that bull crap down at City Hall. A study. It ain't nothing but a George Soros democratic cliche. While they giving illegals and everything all the money. It's sick. Unspoken alliance, Israel's secret relationship with apartheid South Africa. Everywhere you go, you have legal weed. The shops are opening up and they trying to claim they closing them, they ain't closing nothing. Legal weed, they smoking it all over the place in front of you. I ain't seen nobody smoke that stuff and have a big tuna fish sandwich or something to eat. Usually you smoke weed, all you do is start laughing and you want a sandwich and a big plate of food. I ain't seen none of that with this new stuff. But I want to thank Lyndon LaRouche, Dope Incorporated, how they got us strung out, Chinese opium drug wars, how they got black people strung out, the Irish, and they got a picture of George Soros, the man behind the legalization of marijuana. This is the book that drove Henry Kissinger crazy. You can get it and it's doesn't even cost that much money. In honor of Dr. Randy Short, Slavery Mastery, the impact of religious slavery revealed. I keep mentioning George Soros and nobody ever wants to look at what he's talking about and what he's doing, the man behind the scenes. This is the man behind the curtains, Matt Holmgren. Inside the secret network of Soros and the shadow party, how Soros and Hillary in the 60s seized the Democratic Party. And I don't know what Hillary Clinton must be pissed off because they put Kabbalah in there in front of her. You know she got resentment. Wayne Mansfield's classic, The Manufacturing of a President. And I'm going to say it one more time. They really duped us with Barack Hussein Obama, a.k.a. Barry Santoro, and the other numerous CIA names that he had. The CIA insertion of Barack Hussein Obama into the White House. All you got to do is buy the book and read it. Don't get mad at me. And it's a shame what they're doing in the town where they brought him in, the city, Chicago. And they got another Manchurian candidate running for president right now and you can't even see it. It's so blind. All they got to do is put a black person in front of your face and you just lose your damn mind. Our sister, Cynthia McKinney, when China sneezes from the coronavirus and the global political lockdown, Cynthia McKinney. And I started reading this book and I'm going to tell you, beware, this book goes where you dare not tread, but must if you are to fully understand the impact and importance of SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 as not just menacing to global health, but also a delivery system for global population control, physical, political, and economics. Be sure to buckle your seatbelts, because by the time you completed these pages, your outlook on health, wealth, and global governments won't be the same. And Sister McKinney is a bad sister, and black folks ran her out of Georgia on orders. Now, Donald Trump said places are shithole countries. And everybody thought that he made this up. Well, there's a book out called How the U.S. Create Shithole Countries. And it's edited by Cynthia McKinney. Political Science and Global Foreign Policy. They selling these books on Amazon. Ain't nobody gonna tell Jeff Bezos what not to sell on Amazon. And he's so bad you can order it at 6 o'clock. By the time you eat your dinner at 5 o'clock, the book will be in your door. So you can get any book you want and teach your kids your own self. in his 1-2 punch. Jews are the problem, and Jews are the problem too, the psychology of the Jew. We want to thank Brother Io for going beyond the call of duty and writing these 2 books. They're small, they're so small, but when you finish doing the research on these publications, you will go crazy with the information. We always have a couple here at Mackey's group, just in case listening audience want. Now I'm getting ready to come to the blockbuster. Capitalism on the ventilator. The impact of CO-19 in China, and if you go on YouTube and look at the congressional hearings with former Governor Cuomo, just go on YouTube and listen. Just go on there and listen and watch it for yourself. Capitalism on the ventilator. Our good friend out of Decatur, Georgia, Dr. Scott Whitaker, Medicine, MEDISIN, causes and solutions to the disease of malnutrition and the medical sins that are killing the world. We want to thank Dr. Scott. Okay. Robert Kennedy, former presidential candidate Robert Kennedy, gives us a 1-2 punch with Dr. Brian Hooker, the real Anthony Fauci, and after you read this book on Anthony Fauci, and you see, you don't see him nowhere in sight, because he's been exposed. It's in the book. And Dr. McCullough, The Truth About CO-19. Unvaxxed, Let the Science Speak, and the Wuhan Cover-Up. Robert Kennedy, Brian Hooker, and numerous doctors that put their license on the line to come up with these books. And let me tell you something, you can say what you want to say about Kennedy, but never in history has the Democratic Party kicked the goddamn Kennedy to the curb. You go to old people's house and they still got a picture of Martin Luther King, Jesus Christ, and John F. Kennedy. Now everybody got a goddamn problem with it. Deception, the great CO cover-up. This is Senator Rand Paul. He's a senator. He's a senator. And he wrote a book. And it's almost 450 pages. And I don't care how long it takes to read it, but you can get it on Amazon. The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. Chancellor went beyond the call of duty in writing this book, in its numerous editions, but not everything was glorious in that great land, Akbu land, the land of the black, and those great wars, and those very powerful people. Everything was not correct, and he lays out the mistakes we made as a people. But in some parts of this book, we were some bad mothers, but we made a lot of mistakes. Same way we're making mistakes now. If you get this book, it'll be able to lay out some of the problems. Spiro Agnew, in his own story leading to his resignation, Go Quietly or Else. And this is the last classic. We open up the newspaper. Tito Jackson, one of our own. See, these are strong African Americans that we love, and they just drop. Every time you open up the paper, something is dropping. Young kids dropping on the football field. The ballerina, 29 years old, collapsed. Edward Down, and you can get this on Amazon, and they have it to you in less than 24 hours. Causes unknown, the epidemic of sudden death in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and coming into 2025. All you gotta do is read the book. Don't get mad at me. Edward Dow has the pictures of young, strong men. These people are young. They're young. Athletes. Gentle giant. Dad, 29, collapses. And when you try to get some kind of why, they tell you some bull. Edward down, and they not banning none of this. And I'm getting real mad because I'm tired of opening up the newspaper and hearing all this stuff and people actually taking up this nonsense. These are events for the listening audience and the community and global who watch the Mackey's lectures. You can get your information, Thorough Black Talk with Tad, Keisha Ashe, Sister Mama, and Brother Blacksmith. That comes on YouTube Live every Thursday at 8 o'clock, and they tearing up the East Coast. They know about everything. Good program. Just got to make sure you don't eat before you're watching the program, because you might fall asleep and then you wake up and they tag them and still giving it up. We want to thank Keisha and all of them, and they don't cut, no, they go after each other too. Our Philadelphia connection, Sister Empress Chi and the Million Women's March, Brother Lumumba and all them great people. Blog Talk Radio comes on every Saturday at 10:30 p.m. and the number is 1319-527-6189, and you can log in and get on the topic. Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. Every Monday at 10 o'clock, Brother Ayo Kamati is laying it live. He did an interview today with Haitian President Barbecue, and it was real good. And he's going to be coming to New York in a minute. So we got Brother Ayo Kamati, WSYP 95.1, Birmingham, Alabama. That's at 10 a.m. Just go into Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. Every Tuesday, and I heard yesterday, I couldn't get it yesterday because I had some business, but Dr. Lee, they said he came on at 7 o'clock, and he didn't go off until 10 o'clock at night. He talked so much. Dr. Lee, Your Immunity Project, 7 p.m. and on California Radio. So we want to thank Dr. Lee. The African Echo Study Group out of Newark, New Jersey, with Brother Trust Graham, Brother Danny, True, and all of them. They have the study group come on Fridays at 8 o'clock, and they doing the psychology of self-hatred and self-defeat toward the reclamation of the African mind. And not only that, Brother True and the Know Thyself study group out of Asbury Park. They have a Saturday, so they give you a 1-2 punch, and you can log on Saturday, and they trust is the mediator of that group, and they're doing the destruction of black civilization. The Simotap family, Dr. James McIntosh, Richard Dean Theodore, and Betty Dobson, they have changed. If you want to know what's going on, go into Simotap. And Dr. James McIntosh has the radio program Minefield, and it's got to start getting used to it. He comes on Tuesday at 10 o'clock instead of Wednesday, so we're just getting used to it. And he's talking about the movie that disgrades us, Good Times, the cartoon, and all the disgusting stuff that Hollywood is portraying to black people, and you got the nerve to sit here and want some reparations, and you can't even stop Hollywood from disrespecting you in the movies, and you still go pay your money? That's one of the most disgusting cartoon epics, and some black people is down with it, but there's some Jews behind it. So how you gonna get respect and reparations, and you can't stop them from disrespecting you in the movies, and got you putting on dresses and all kind of nonsense, and listening to this crap with these phonies. They got everybody on the news talking about this phony baloney. Sick. You can see all the William Mackey Jr. Huh? Oh. I want to thank my lovely wife for making me remember, and I got it right here. Our Power Pack brother, our big dog, our good friend, Darren Mahannon, State of the City. He comes on 12 o'clock every Saturday on TuneIn Radio. He comes on Instagram and Facebook. I call him Darren Powerhouse Mohammed, State of the City. He also comes on sometimes Wednesday, sometimes Thursday. But you will never be the same This is Steve Coakley, 2025. We want to thank Brother Darren Muhammad in State of the City. He's a bad man and I respect him. And they also have Jeannie coming up every month for the Kicking It Live at the Terror Cafe. And let me tell you something, family. If you're in Baltimore and you stop by 25th and St. Paul, they got some fish and french fries at the Terror Cafe that'll knock your socks off. So we want to thank the Terror Cafe and Brother Darren Muhammad for bringing the Lexus up and Jeannie coming up. Okay.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Announce this.
Huh?
Don't he have a show? Don't Tad have a show?
I'm getting ready to say that right now. Ladies and gentlemen, before I announce our speaker, who's a good friend of the Mackey's group, he also is co-host of Thorough Black Talk with Ted Keisha, but he also has the OG Wisdom Podcast every Sunday at 2 o'clock on Facebook and YouTube. And sometimes he has some old school brothers that really bring it back to you, but if you're not from the old school and wasn't around, you won't understand what we're talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, he can tell you a little bit more about himself, but I want you to give a great big hand to our good friend and keynote speaker for the night, Brother Tad, co-host and co-founder of the Thorough Black Talk radio program. Sorry, I took so long, but you know how it goes.
It's all good, brother.
And tell them about the fitness thing.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. We want to talk about all that. Oh, man. It feels good to be back. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Brother Ray. I want to thank your beautiful wife. My name is Brother Tad. I'm the co-host of the OG Wisdom Podcast with me and my brother C. Cutter, the real C. Cutter of Junior Mafia. We go on every Sunday at 2 p.m. We have a new time from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. You can find me and C. Cutter talking about history and how it relates to us now and current events, as well as you can catch me every Thursday night on YouTube on Thorough Black Talk with me, Sister Keisha, Brother Blacksmith, and Sister Marcia. Tonight I want to talk about why we must fight and our will to resist. But I want to tell you who I am. I'm just a brother from the neighborhood, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, with a black mother, a black father, raised in a black community with a black family. At one point owned black businesses here in Bed-Stuy. Now as a child of the 70s who grew up in the 80s and got my stripes in the 90s, I've seen society change. And with all the beautiful people our brother Ray has mentioned, I have love, respect, a good brotherhood and friendship with just about everybody he named. So I'd be remiss if I didn't give them their props. What I like to do when I present this information is I like to give it to the layman, to the people of our community who may have never heard this information before. As Brother Ray showed, there's tons of books written by prolific authors, politicians, theologians, people who are heavily invested in the direction that society is going in. So I feel it's important that we pay attention to the political and social climate of where we are right now because we're a critical mass. I give honor and gratitude to all the ancestors that were mentioned in the early opening. Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Clark, Louis Ray Rivera, someone who I remember meeting and seeing in the community. I think it's very important that we acknowledge these people because just as they are great, you too can be great. A lot of times as black people, we've been through a lot of trauma in our lives, in our family, in our community. But how do you make a slave? You make a slave by breaking their will to resist, by breaking their will to subscribe to what nature has deemed necessary for us to thrive and live. What we're dealing with is unnatural phenomenon right now. This is how you make a slave. You make someone go against their own nature, operate outside of their best interest, and work for the interests of other people. And this is what's going on right now. With this pain, we have to push through. And I don't have any of this stuff written down, I just have some notes. But I think it's very important that black people turn their pain into purpose, and that purpose into passion. Because sure as we stand on the shoulders of giants, you too can be great. I like to quote Stevie Wonder a lot. He has a song called Pastime Paradise. And it says, we can't spend most of our life living in the pastime paradise. A lot of times, as black folks, we like to think of the good old days. We like to think of the glory days, go way back in past. 20 years, 40 years, 5,000 years, 10,000 years. But what are we going to do about the problems that we're facing right now? One of the things that made our ancestors and our freedom fighters is great is that they didn't harbor on the past. What they did was look towards the future. And I think as a community, that's something that's necessary that we have to do right now. We're in the year 2024. Now, for many of the people, think back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, when we were imagining what 2000 would look like. We are now 24 years into this new millennium, still going strong. We still have some freedom fighters, but it's time that we really multiply. Because a lot of what was said back in the 80s and 90s are here now. They've come to pass. Notice you don't even hear politicians talk about the New World Order anymore because we're literally living in it. There has been a global reset. And I just want folks to know that greatness is an inside job. This is something you can do. When we talk about fighting, we're not necessarily talking about physical, though it can come down to that. But we're just talking about resisting those things that's forced upon you. I want to read something real quick for those who may have never heard it before. It's called the Willie Lynch Letter. It's by a man named Willie Lynch from the year 1712. Now, some people may have heard it, some people may have not. Some people say Willie Lynch is a real person, some people say he's fictitious. But I really want you to listen to it because whether he's real or not, the principles still apply. And they're in full swing to this day. He starts, greetings. Gentlemen, I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with the slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods of control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program is implemented. As our boat sailed south on the James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish, I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of woods as crosses for standing human bodies along its highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree and the rope on occasions. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple of miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings, slaves are running away, your crops are sometimes left in the field too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires, your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems. I am here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple list of differences and think about them. On top of my list is age, but it's there only because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, and sizes of plantations, status on plantations, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on the hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust, and envy stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slaves are receiving this indoctrination shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generated for hundreds of years. maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male, and the male versus the female. You must also have white servants and overseers who distrust all blacks, but it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, does that sound familiar to what we're dealing with right now, this day and age? We talk about all the differences that separate us, yet we have a common enemy. One of the things we're experiencing right now is the gender war. And as Dr. Clark said, we can't take on this fight with only half the army. So brothers, just know we need our sisters. Sisters, know that you need us brothers. We're here together to fight this fight. Now tonight I have laid out 10 points I just want to cover. I'll try to make them as brief as possible, but like I said, there's 10. But 10 areas of improvement that we can use to move our community forward. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing said 9 areas of human activity. However, I'm gonna lay out 10 of them. 9 is in here, but again, this is what we're dealing with right now. And peace be on to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. May she rest in peace. The first thing I want to talk about is economic power. We got to advocate for financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and access capital for black-owned businesses. Support policies that address wealth inequality and home ownership and fair wages. Again, support policies that addresses wealth inequality, home ownership, and fair wages. Today is September 18, 2024. We're on the cusp of an election year. Rather, this is the election year. In 2 more months, we'll be casting our ballots. When we talk about policies, we have somebody who's already in office, already installed, and I'm not trying to make this my political soapbox, however, we got to make it relative for where we are today. We have a person who opened up the borders and let in so many migrants, as we'll call them, undocumented migrants. Dr. Claude Anderson had told us back in, I believe, 2005, maybe it was 2010, that we will be replaced by another social group. Many people laughed and said, that's impossible. This government won't do this to us. But remember, we just read the Willie Lynch letter. These people are now here, and as of August 23rd in California, they just signed a bill that undocumented migrants will receive $125,000 to $250,000 grant for first-time home ownership. Undocumented migrants. What does that mean? That means people who haven't paid taxes, people who haven't put blood, sweat, and tears in building this nation like our ancestors have. Yet, the division that we just talked about, what was left off the list was the Republican and Democrat Party. So here you got one particular group that are in favor of other folks getting set-asides, getting money, that those of us that literally built this nation are not even being considered for. And when we're asked, what about black people? What about our reparations for our years of labor of building this nation? Someone, the vice president, the standing vice president now, said they're going to put together a committee to have a conversation to consider reparations. Have a conversation to consider. That means you ain't doing nothing for us. This is trick talk that's going on, and I want our people to be real clear on what we're dealing with when we talk about economics, because I think everybody is feeling the brunt of what's going on. The high prices, people losing their jobs because they didn't want to get poked with the mandated medicine. It's a lot of things that we can do to make us great ourselves. So when we talk about economics, we have to talk about policies. When we talk about voting, for those that do want to vote and believe in this political system, you have to ask, what's in it for you? What's in it for my vote? We were already promised 40 acres and a mule centuries ago, and they've yet to deliver. During the Reconstruction era, we were denied, though we built our own communities. In fact, one of the people I can think of is a brother named O.W. Gurley. He is the founder of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A lot of people like to talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma and Black Wall Street. That was just one of many. But this man took his own money and went and literally bought 40 acres. And he built a community for black people. This is when they were giving out land out west and people were rushing out there for gold. And he understood that you can't wait on other people to take care of your needs, because if you do that, you're indebted to them. If we're talking about freedom, we have to be honest about what freedom looks like to us. As black folks, I think this is a question we seldom ask. So I charge you with that question. What does freedom look like? Does freedom look like the same freedom that Dr. King and Malcolm fought and died for? Desegregation, integration, an opportunity to be treated like a human being? Is this the freedom we're talking about? Or is it the freedom that Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner fought for? The freedom to not be in bondage and not be on a plantation. I really want us to think about what freedom is, because we have an opportunity right now to make a definition of what freedom looks like for us. We talk this political system right now only because we're in the election. It's an election climate. But what are we going to do with this knowledge and the information we have? Yeah, we can invoke the names of their ancestors and talk about all the great things that they did. But if we're descendants of these people, what great things are we going to do in our space and time right now? I think that's real important. So when we talk about economic empowerment, we have to support people who have policies in place that speak for us. And I think right now is the perfect time for us to revisit creating our own political party. But that's a topic for a whole nother conversation, because I don't really think the masses are ready to leave these plantations, whether it's Democrat or Republican. Malcolm spoke about the bullet of the ballot. I hear people constantly say our votes don't count because we only 13% of the population. But one thing Malcolm pointed out in the bullet of the ballot, he talked about the rift between the Republicans and the Democrats as white folks. And our 13% may not seem like much, but it's enough to shift the balance of power. However, we can't side with any of these groups if we don't have any demands. We have to know that something's in it for us. We can't constantly take the back seat to what everybody else is doing. Vice President Kamala Harris says she can't do anything exclusively for black people, but if you check her record, she has funded, I believe, millions, if not billions of dollars to Asians and South Pacifics, just particularly to that group alone, that group specifically. So when we talk about blackness and what it is, we got to realize it's not just what you look like, it's also a consciousness that you have to have. Kamala Harris identified as an Asian, she identified as an Indian. Yeah, she'll say she's black, just like Hillary Clinton said she carries hot sauce in her bag. You have to know when you're being insulted and people are pandering to you. The second topic is education reform. What does that look like? What is education? Or what is edited dictation? Carter G. Woodson said, in this life, man gets two educations. One that's given to him and one that he gives himself. And the latter by far is greater. We have to stop relying on these school systems to educate our children. That's a huge problem. We have tons of African-centered homeschools that can be visited. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dr. Walima Baruti and the Akko Ben House. Right here in Brooklyn, the Zayeks Institute. You know, what we have, we also have the Uhuru Academy down in Texas. I mean, there's a plethora of schools. But at the same token, we gotta watch out for charlatans. We gotta watch out for people that's constantly collecting money for the community and not delivering. We have to be mindful for snake oil salesmen. Now, without going into any names, there's a particular self-appointed leader in our community that has been collecting money for over 10 years, promising black folks a school for black boys and girls. and challenges anybody that question him on the progress of the school. Now I say this to you as the community, that it's on us to start checking people when they rob from the community. 10 years of collecting money and still no progress. But now this particular person wants to be a YouTube star, social media influencer, and now have a dating show. Black folks, we got to start taking things serious. It's on us. If we don't challenge these people, if we don't G-check these people in the spirit of Malcolm and Dr. Khalid, we're laughing stocks. First thing we got to do is clean house. Because if we don't deal with the enemy inside, we definitely gonna have problems with the enemies outside. There's so much I can say about that, but I'm adamant about educating our young people. And what does that look like? We may have our children enrolled in public school, but I think it's important that when our children come home, we deprogram them and constantly drill in their head the importance of their own identity, because what our children are being subjected to right now is something that many of us think was unfathomable at one point in life. Telling our sons they could be girls, telling our girls they could be boys, and not even being clear on what a gender is. Saying that there's over 70-something, I think last time I checked, it may even be 100 now. 100 different versions of gender expression. That is very confusing, because the Creator only created 2 genders, that's male and female. And not only that, they want us to align with other groups who may feel that they're oppressed. And here's the problem I have with that, and this is what we got to educate our children on. People's perception of being addressed is just that, their perception. Because if people don't tell us their religious background, if people don't tell us their sexual preferences, we wouldn't know. But our blackness, we can't hide. This is the way the Creator made us. This is nature. You cannot hide nature. You can't hide our natural identity. But the problem is, they want to make everybody who feels oppressed synonymous with black folks. And here's the trick about that. Black folks, we're oppressed for something we can't control. Other groups are picking this oppression. A lot of this is preference. When you say a preference, it is a choice. And we're not going to have oppression Olympics with other groups. Other groups talk about what they went through in their country. They talk about what they went through in their families. Yeah, that may be true. However, we're dealing with a global system that has been trying to not just crush us, but literally eliminate us and annihilate us. We have suffered what's called the Mayafa. Other groups have a Holocaust, we have the Mayafa. That's Swahili for the great suffering. Because what many people don't know, they just think slavery when they think about what has happened to black people here in America and in the Caribbean. But you have to think about the 300 plus miles from the March of the Interior to the west coast of Africa. There were plenty deaths then. But then once you boarded the slave ship, they marched through the door of no return. There were hundreds of deaths through the transatlantic slave trade, which is really not a slave trade. It's actually called the Mayafa. A trade would suggest equal exchange. But there's no amount of money, tobacco, cotton, or rum you can get to equal the value of an African life. So we don't call it the trade anymore, the triangular trade. A trade is something fair. We call it the Mayafa, our great suffering. So that's 2 instances. But now we're talking about once we get off those boats, and now we're on the plantations of South Carolina, Virginia, and all up and down the East Coast. Our lives on the plantations, as well as Emancipation Proclamation that subjected us to black codes. There were tons of things that, the centuries, and we can't condense that in a few minutes of a point. But when we talk about education, let's educate our children on who we are and what has happened to us and why our story is unique from so many other people. Because I've once seen shirts and slogans say gay is the new black. You can't equate your sexual appetite with my African identity. We're not going to do that. And for anybody to accept that, you're operating with a defeated mentality. So when we educate our children, let's remind them that kings and queens come from Africa. I see some people on the internet say everybody in Africa wasn't kings and queens. We all wasn't kings and queens. Stop calling us each other kings and queens. What many people don't know who hold that position is that during our Ma'afa, during the colonization and the legal human trafficking of Africans out of the continent, what they did to demoralize the villages in the nation was they stole the royal family. This is how you become king and queen. And I hate to bring fictitious stuff in there, but if you ever look at Wakanda, if you ever look at Black Panther, that's the only way you can become a Black Panther. You have to be from the bloodline. This is why Killmonger was able to challenge T'Challa. They even have the X-Men cartoons that shows you, which is a little more true to life. Because one thing that was actually, when I was in Ghana and I went to the King's Palace Museum, they asked, why is the king and the queen never married? And that was a good question, because we always thought the king and queen married each other. That's our Eurocentric mindset, so we got to deprogram it. So we all said, no, why is the king and queen never married? They said, because they're always family. Chances are the queen is grandma, and the king may be the grandson, the son, the nephew, or the young cousin. There's a matriarchal system that exists in Ghana to where only the queen mother can check the king. But how do they select the king? The king is selected by the women in the family. It's based on character and integrity. This is how they decide who the king is. So if the grandma got about 6, 7, 10 grandsons, she takes a look at who's the most behaved, who's the most honest, who deserves to be the king. And when that time comes, he's selected. But that doesn't minimize the value of his siblings and his cousins, who are eligible to be the kings also. So during our Ma'afa, during us being trafficked, human trafficked, over here to the northern hemisphere, they stole those people. So it's very important that when we speak to each other, we don't speak to the N-word, but we speak to the kings and queens that exist within us. We speak to the gods. And it's very important that our children know that, because if you talk to young people right now, when they run around, they'll tell you they're on demon time. When you see the way they behave, when you see the way they show up in the world, they say they're on demon time. But now imagine what happened if you let them know that they were gods, that they were kings, by nature, by birthright. We would have a paradigm shift, and we would empower them to reclaim their power from the false identities that's forced on them by our open enemies. So when we talk about educating our children, that's where we start, letting them know that they are divine by design. They are divine by design. We always have to speak life into our young people. It's very important that we do that. The criminal justice system. As I talk about the young people being on demon time, we have to stop making criminality synonymous with black folks. If you look at Wiggers, white folks that think they black, born in black neighborhoods, they think they're down by professing to be criminals, by professing to do crimes, selling drugs, using drugs. All of these things that was put in place in our society to destroy black people. We have to rebuke and denounce that. We have to speak about people like Carter G. Woodson. We have to speak about so many educators, Malcolm, Dr. Khaled, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Asa Hilliard, Dr. Renaud Qureshi, so many doctors that we have in our midst and who have transitioned. We have to hold them up, not the criminals. We can't hold up the 50 Cents. We can't hold up the Snoop Dogs. We can't hold up the Alpos and all the gangsters of the streets. Granted, they have their place once they're mentally reprogrammed, because that's our warrior class, but they haven't been programmed to know who the right enemy is. But we have to stop making criminality synonymous with our blackness. There's a book by Dr. Khalil Gibran Muhammad. I'm not sure if he's still the director of the Schomburg Institute of Culture and Research, but he wrote a book called The Condemnation of Blackness, and he deals with that. He deals with how after the Emancipation Proclamation, black codes was installed that pretty much made it criminal for us to be black. So if you on the plantation December 31st, 1865, January 1st, 1866, you're deemed to be free, but the caveat is you have to have a job. If you don't have a job, you're subject to vagrancy laws and you can be incarcerated. To where the 13th Amendment says slavery is abolished except in the prison system. This is And again, I said back in the 1800s, we in 2024 right now. This is a plan that's been in play for hundreds of years. As I opened up with the Willie Lynch letter, and he said this will work for at least 300 years. That was 1712, Willie Lynch gave that speech. We are now 312 years later. We are centuries behind the ball. But there's things that we can literally do right now. In awakening our true identity, our African consciousness, we can win this war. This is why we have to fight and constantly resist. This is information that's out there. I mean, many of us walk around with a computer in our hand. We just not asking the right questions. So with that, with the criminal reform, it starts with us. It starts with our behavior. And I say that as a personal story in the testament as somebody who was born and raised in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, who thought it was cool, the order of the day was to be a tough guy, to engage in criminal activities. We used to go to Manhattan, and we called it digging pockets. Most people call it picking pockets. We sold poison to our community. Those of us who are still alive, we regret those things because we've been programmed with illness and insanity, but now we've unplugged from the matrix. We're deprogramming ourselves. And the way we keep them jail cells empty is by not participating in the foolishness and building community. Once you have community, you have a safeguard that's going to be your advocate, and protect you against local police. Now on a national scale, that's something a little different, but that's a strategy we also have to implement, you know, just to move forward. Number 4, we have to deal with our health. I'm a little bit over 50 years old. I came into the movement in the 1990s. I came into the movement when I met Dr. Khalid Muhammad in a corner store on Clinton Avenue on Fulton Street. We exchanged numbers. We linked up. When he came back from Georgia, the rest was history. You know, I went from reading the books to getting active, to becoming an activist, out there at the rallies, just sitting around learning. I was young. I was still in my 20s back then, in the 90s. But I was still learning, absorbing this stuff. But one thing that I did notice was the poor health of many of the elders within the community. Though we are fighting white supremacy in the ideas, unfortunately, we weren't taking our health serious. So a lot of elders I saw, gout, diabetes, heart disease, glaucoma, and that's because we still didn't shake the slave diet. Many people will put on a dashiki and then go eat a barbecue rib, and I ain't knocking nobody's diet. However, we have to take that into consideration on what we say we represent. We have to be mindful of how the enemy is fighting us. Because truth be told, they weaponize everything, from the court system, the television, to the foods we're eating. Now they eat, once they seen that we were going to plant-based, they started making plants, fruits and vegetables in the lab. So we definitely have to be mindful. We have to take our health very serious. That's the only thing we have. But how do we take our health serious? First of all, we have to be mindful of how much calories do our body need to function on a day-to-day, and make sure we don't go over that. These are little things we can find out. We definitely have to make regular doctor visits. Please, find a doctor you can trust, preferably a black one. But find a doctor you can trust. Find someone who's gonna let you be proactive in your health care. Like I said, I'm a little over 50. I've been making all of my doctor's appointments every year, at minimum every year, my annuals, since I was in my 30s when I was overweight. I was close to 300 pounds at one point in my life. You know, I had to come down, and I'm not very tall at all. So you can imagine how big I was. I wore size 44s. So here I am, a young father, have a family to protect. I got the knowledge, I read the books, but how can I protect my family if I can't even walk a block? If somebody decided to break in my house and do something to my family, how can I protect them physically if I don't have a weapon? That's a problem. We got a lot of mouth, but we're not in shape to really defend ourselves or our family, let alone the community. We have to take our health serious. And this is something as simple as a 20-minute walk every day. Drink more water, less juice, more fruits and vegetables, less bread, whole foods, whole foods. What do I mean by whole foods? Single ingredient foods. Not too much rice, but rice is okay. but potatoes, chicken, steak, if you will, you know, whatever it is, whatever kind of meat you eat, small portions, your healthy fats, which are almonds, cashews, peanuts, avocados, olive oil, coconut oil. These are simple, single ingredients. When something has more than 5 ingredients, you know it's processed. It's weaponized against you. Single ingredient foods is the key. Because all you should be eating, let's say in the morning, breakfast, a cup of oatmeal, 3 eggs, your tea, your coffee, or your water. That's it. That's it. You don't need a whole bunch of food. All right? We're killing ourselves. These are things we can do ourselves. Let's stop indulging in the enemy's weapons. So that's the health piece, the political engagement. Again, where we are right now, we have to encourage engagement and civic participation. Some people, again, in case you didn't know, the Electoral College selects the president. Your power is in the local elections. Your power is with your district leader. It's with your councilman. It's with your assemblyman. It's with the people that live immediately in your area. As a community, start having meetings with brothers and sisters. It's not that hard. You can meet in somebody's living room. Discuss what's going on in your neighborhood, things that you need in your neighborhood. And then you take it to these people's offices, because chances are you go past these people's office every day and never stop in just to see what's going on. I'll tell you a quick story about political engagement. And a lot of times I make these things personal, let you know, as the young people say, I'm not capping. This is true. One time I was arrested, 88th precinct. I'm standing in front of the desk sergeant, hands cuffed behind my back. 4 or 5 Jewish people walk in the precinct, and they just looking around. One of the officers asked, can they help? He said, can I help you? They said, no, we just looking around to see how you operate. He said, well, do you have any questions? He said, no. He said, we're buying property in this neighborhood, and we just want to see how do y'all conduct business. And I said, damn, that's powerful. I ain't never seen no black people just walk in the precinct and just observe the police. Just watch. The only time I see black people in the precinct is when they're in cuffs or somebody coming to get their son or their baby daddy or whoever coming to get them out. And that let me know how they engage in civics compared to how we engage in civics. We're very reactionary. They're very proactive. And I'm not saying let's emulate other groups of people, but let's come up with a strategy that's going to work in our benefit.
Yep.
Because unfortunately, we have plenty of people that's been in the movement for decades. And in our midst of the African-centered community, we have people with political ties that won't denounce the people that are actually hurting the black community. And that in itself causes a rift within us and our personal relationships in the community. We're setting horrible examples for the people coming behind us, and then we wonder why black people won't engage in their own survival. But look at the example we're setting as a community, as a group, as people who supposedly have been doing this work for decades. We're setting poor examples. We're letting enemies in, and we're not chastising them or checking them, even when they agree with policies and people who work against our interests. That's political engagement. That's something to think about. Representation in media. Oh man. We got, and I need to read this one. We got to demand accurate and diverse representation of black people in film, television, and other media. Challenge harmful stereotypes and promote positive narratives that reflect the true diversity of the black experience. We have to demand accurate and diverse representation of black people in media and challenge harmful stereotypes. I can only talk about right now and today, because we have tons of examples in media of us being disrespected. In fact, one of the earliest ones, and this is funny, for the people who may not have known, there was a man named Thomas Dartmouth Rice. He used to dress in blackface, do little vaudeville plays and things like that. He created a character named Jumpin' Jim Crow. It was a negative image of who black people are supposed to be. It was a big hit. He went around the country performing as Jumpin' Jim Crow. They drew a character and published it in local newspapers. White people loved it so much they ate it up. Said, yeah, this is black people with big lips, his pants hanging off his butt, always begging. Yeah, this is black folks, jumping Jim Crow. They believed it so much that they created laws named after a fictitious character called Jim Crow laws. That's where Jim Crow laws come from. It's a real thing created by fictitious identity. And if we don't push back right now, with people like Sexy Red and Megan Thee Stallion, here you got the vice president inviting these people promoting prostitution culture to our young people as if this is the image of black womanhood. The onus is on us. We have to push back. We have to denounce and deny all images that show us in the worst light and lift up images that show black people in the best light. I remember as a kid in the 80s when the Cosby Show came out, many people tried to denounce the show and said it wasn't real. Oh, a doctor and a lawyer, that's not real, that's not real. That's because our mind is so small. Why can't there be a black doctor and a black lawyer married to one another with an intact family, trying to do right by their family, not in poverty, not on welfare, like so many of the shows prior to that have shown us. Whether it was Good Times, which I love personally, and I'm glad Esther Rolle demanded that she have a black husband, but nonetheless, they made our intact family synonymous with ghetto life, crime, drugs, and gang violence. That's not who we are. Or even if you go to What's Happening, a single mother, overweight, looking like Mammy, trying to raise her family because her husband Bill, a deadbeat dad who don't want to do right. Negative images. Even if you fast forward from the 70s to the 80s and you look at Nell Carter with Give Me a Break, looking like the Mammy taking care of white folks again. You can talk about Webster, George Papadopoulos and his wife, being the benevolent white people they are and adopting this poor, underprivileged black kid. Same as Philip Drummond did with Arnold and Willis Jackson. See, these images burn in our mind and we hold this synonymous to who black people are. And we start adopting these identities that we need the benevolence of white folks because without them, we just gonna be jammed up. So we have to denounce negative images in the media. And if you haven't, I hope you catch one of the recordings with Simotap as they attack the new Good Times cartoon because it's an insult. I watched, I think, the first 2 minutes of that show and I just had to turn it off and I was so insulted. And black people, we should be insulted and we should boycott it because that's not who we are. We are beautiful, illustrious people. We are the kings and queens of the continent, I dare say the old world and the new world, because we still have sitting kings on the continent, but they'll never show you that because they only want you to think that European folks are royalty and they rule the world. And I always tell people this as we deal with media. White people do not control the world. You hear me? Come a little closer. White people do not control the world. They control the image that they control the world. So stop acquiescing to anything that they say and do. Even when we go back to the health, when they made everybody take the Pokemon poke, that was against our will. And what hurt me, and again, I'm not passing judgment. I'm not passing judgment. I say this with all love, but I was disappointed with a lot of people that did take the jab. I was very disappointed for a lot of elders in the African-centered community. My mother wasn't African-centered. She was pro-black, but she wasn't African-centered, if that makes sense. She liked the Jesus black, she liked black art, you know, she's pro-black, but she wasn't African-centered. And I begged my mother, and I'll share this story with y'all because it's so personal to me. I begged my mother not to do it. And she gave me every excuse that Dr. Fauci and them put on television. Again, we're dealing with media. I said, Mom, please don't take that. She said, but Tad, she said, you know, I got your grandmother here and I want to be able to travel, come to New York. And she said, Mom, please, no, it ain't been out long enough. We don't know what the long-term effects are. And she gave me all the spiel that they gave her, that, you know, that they gave society. And then she asked me, why aren't I taking it? I said, because I don't trust these people. I know who they are. I read Medical Apartheid. I know the Tuskegee experiment. I know that they're the original body snatchers. Because if you ever read Medical Apartheid, the bombing of the 4 little girls, right? That was prior to the Civil Rights Movement. I'm gonna get back to my mama, but this story always stayed on because we all know about the 4 little girls in Birmingham, Alabama. When they were buried, there was still segregation. There was the black cemetery and the white cemetery. One of the little girls was buried at a cemetery, but once civil rights came, the black cemetery went ignored and unkempt. So her sister said, I want my baby sister exhumed, and I want to put her in a better kept cemetery. When they exhumed the caskets, they opened it and the body was gone. Still yet to be located. At least this is what's recorded in Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. That girl name is Ada Mae Collins. Please read Medical Apartheid as we deal with health and media and how they present each other. So when my mother said, Tad, what if they tell you you're gonna lose your job if you don't take the poke? I said, Mom, you know me all my life. Since when you know me not being able to get money? I said, this job ain't the only place that got money. I'll get money somewhere else. And we went back and forth with it for a little while. And my mother got the jab. She texted me, said I did it. She said, I go back next week for my second one. She went back for a second one, and 2 weeks later, I get a text from my little sister, say, OMG, mommy is not breathing. I'm like, what do you mean? She FaceTimed me. My mother lived in Virginia. Paramedics is working on her. My mother transitioned that day, May 30th, 2021. This is the price we pay when we don't engage on day-to-day activity, arming ourselves with knowledge and information on how we can better protect ourselves. Because that's my personal story with my mother. But we see that we just lost Frankie Beverly, James Earl Jones, Fat Man Scoop, and a few other people. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of these people took the jab. As our brother Ray showed you, a book that was recently published, talking about people that are transitioning early. This whole thing is a big farce. We have to be mindful about what we take in. So when we talk about media and health, all this stuff is relative. All of this is relative because these people have weaponized mass communications, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all of these are weapons and none of these things are really real. Even the information that you see us give you, don't take it for face value, do your own research. And the beauty about doing your own research, you may catch something that we may have missed. And you can add on to the pot and help us move forward. But the fact of the matter is, the war has never stopped. So we have to continue to fight. That's the only way we're going to win this thing. That's the only way our grandchildren are going to have a position in this world that they're trying to really move us out of. So we talked about media and culture. Number 7, support for black families. This is important, y'all. Support for black families, promote policies that strengthen the black family unit, including affordable housing, parental leave, child care, family-friendly workspaces. Like, these are the things that we have to ask these politicians for right now. That's why I keep talking about what's going on today. What are black people talking about today? Only thing we talking about right now is Kamala and Trump. But what is our conversation? I don't like Trump, or I don't like Kamala, or I'm voting for Kamala because she's black, and Trump gonna give me money. Support black families. This is one thing I always ask of the 2 candidates. Trump is talking about the weaponization of the courts by his open enemies, the Democratic Party. If he becomes president again, and he is publicly acknowledging that courts are being weaponized, will he free our political prisoners, knowing that these courts were weaponized against him? It's a question we need to put on the table for President Donald Trump. Kamala Harris, the black woman, the chameleon. She's Indian and she's black. Ask her, as a black woman, in the show of solidarity, will you give Assata Shakur a pardon and let her come home? How black are you? See, when we talk about these things, we gotta get serious on what it is to be black. Some people just look at the complexion. But those of us in the know, real black folks know, all skin folk ain't kin folk. So even when we talk about our black families And for conscious black people, the African-centered ones, the people who are on Zoom right now, and the ones watching this on the playback, you probably the only one in your family who thinks like this, who thinks forward, who don't eat everything that's placed in front of you, don't watch everything that people suggest you watch, and don't listen to every quote-unquote leader. You're probably the only one. So how do we strengthen the family? I've been fortunate and blessed that the mothers of my children and my children have a firm belief in me. I'm grateful and I'm so thankful. I'm very thankful because, again, like I said, in the beginning, my resistance came from my mother. But when I started demonstrating that this just wasn't rhetoric, it was a true life change. It was a true habit change. I put the weed down. I put the excessive alcohol down. All the criminal activities and criminals I ran with. She see I started distancing myself from all of those behaviors. She saw the change in me. And one thing about change, anytime you're trying to change, that's when you're going to get the most resistance, to see how sincere you are about this transformation that you're proclaiming to everybody. You say you're not going to eat pork no more, Grandma going to make her world's famous barbecue ribs.
That's right.
And offer it to you and see how serious you is.
That's South Carolina sauce.
That's right, you know. But this is your journey. This is your journey to see how committed and dedicated you are. Because to be a part of this movement, to save black people, it takes a high level of commitment, because a lot of times our folks can disappoint us, but that's all right. That's all right, because as we talk about the family, this is when you reach out for other brothers and sisters. Because those people that share your blood are your relatives. Those people that share common ideas, thoughts, and support, that's your family. So y'all may not have the same last name, y'all may not have the same parents, but because y'all have the same ideas, the same life purpose and mission, that is your family. And I appreciate my black African-centered family with all of my heart. But again, we have to be the example. And how do we do that? We may not be with our ex-spouses. We may not be with our baby mamas or baby daddies, but what we can do is address them with respect and dignity. And trust me, they're going to be the biggest opposers of your growth and transformation. But what you do have to do, particularly if children are involved, you have to show up for the children. You have to show up for the children. You have to temper your anger. You have to show up real different than what you used to do. And people are going to push your buttons, trust me. But once you show them you're sincere and you're changing, because this growth doesn't stop until you die. This is a constant thing. Who you are today is not who you're going to be in 5 years, in 2029. Nonetheless, we have to start practicing what we preach. And I know it's hard, but this is for our family. This is for our children, our grandchildren, and their children, if we're fortunate enough to see them. Because again, we're fighting an open war. So with that family, we want to build strong communities. We want to build communities that centered around solidarity. What does that look like? First of all, we have to come up with a philosophy. Whatever philosophy you and your group, your crew, whoever you with decide is going to be, Whether it's Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, whatever it is, whether you want to join the Moorish Temple, you want to be a Hebrew Israelite, whatever you identify in the sphere of blackness, make sure that you put blackness first. Make sure you put blackness first and you operate for the interest of the black community. I see people in the Nation of Islam, when they come to the community, they don't say, brother and sister, we'll protect you only if you're Muslim. We're not going to feed you only if you're Christian. They see that you're black folks in the community in need, then they feed you and they meet your needs. That's what we need to get back to. Not, this person is not down with my group, so I'm kicking them off. That's a poor example of what it is we say we want to represent if we want more people to come on board. Because the fact of the matter is, the enemy has his tricks and he's really pulling our people away. Because I've never seen so many black people cape for an Indian and try to tell me she's black. But I saw the same thing at the NAACP in Spokane, Washington, when a lady named Rachel Dolezal came and said she was a black woman, and then had the audacity to show up at an NAACP event with a black man saying it was her father. Only then did her white parents notify the NAACP and said, that girl ain't black, that girl is white, that's our daughter. And showed them a picture of her, showed her baby pictures and themselves. Black people, unfortunately, we ate it up. We ate it up that she was black. She became the president of the NAACP out in Spokane, Washington. Not the president, she had some high-ranking position of leadership. But how do we let that happen? I seen an interview with Alex Trebek. He said in the 60s and 70s, he was invited to speak at a lot of black events, but nobody ever asked him, was he black? Just because he had an afro, our folks assumed he was black. I say that to say we got to do a better vetting process on who we allow in our community and speak for us. Because some people are very articulate, like homie who still collected money for the school. I think everybody in here probably donated to the brother's school. But we still have no school, and if you ask about the school, we have a problem. See, here's the thing about our community. We gotta realize people's strengths and weaknesses. Some people are great orators, very articulate, but horrible at organizing, horrible at administration. So you can't be a one-man show and you only a one-trick pony. You need to collaborate with other people in the community who are doing what you're trying to do. If you say you really want to work in the interest of black children, all right? Because I done donated a lot of money for a school that ain't up. I had plans for my daughter to go to that school, and she get ready to graduate high school next year. No, in fact, this year, school just started. She get ready to graduate high school this year. So there's that out the window. But again, it's up to us in the community to be the vanguard on who we allow in the community and who speaks for us and who collects money. Because if you don't do what you're supposed to do with the money, we're supposed to be on your back. That's what those of us who are retired gangsters and warriors and all that, we got to get into action. We got to give it to the enemy in the community before we even start taking it to the enemy outside of the community. That's very important. And last but not least, youth engagement. We got to invest in the next generation by creating JEGNA programs and rites of passage. I say JEGNA, we don't really like to use the word mentorship. Mentorship is for those who don't know, who may be laymen in this sphere that we operating from. Because sure enough, as we talk this community stuff, we also have to change the language. Language is very powerful. And we have to reject European language and thought every opportunity we get. We get it. We're a colonized group. We talk in English. Maybe somebody could come create Swahili classes for us to start learning Swahili so we can speak in Kiswahili. But where we are right now, in this paradigm of English being our first and some of us our only language, opportunities we have to reject certain language, we got to do that. And mentoring is one of them. Because there's negative connotations with the word mentoring when you do the research. So we like to say JEGNAs. JEGNA is a keeper of the culture. It's an elder, you know, and that's what we need. We need more JEGNA programs, teaching our young warriors who they are by nature. In fact, as Brother Ray was reading off Dr. Amos Wilson's books, one of the books that's not up there that I love was Understanding Black on Black Male Adolescent Violence. That was a profound book, and I read that book and it caused me to start a youth group called Party, Parents Actively Reclaiming Their Youth. That book inspired me to do what I could where I was. And with that information about Dr. Amos Wilson, I just inboxed a bunch of people on social media. I tell you, this is how folks is. Because we get online and talk about how bad our children are, how disrespectful they are. So everybody that had negative things to say about our children, I inboxed them and said, yeah, I hear you. So what we gonna do about it? Said, let's get together, let's devise a plan that we come up with a program where we can help our young people, you know? And I inboxed about 70 to 100 people. Out of that amount of people, 10 people showed up to the meeting. Out of 10 people, 4 stayed committed. 4 people out of between 70 and 100. So how serious are we when we talk about the future, when we talk about the black community, if we're not going to invest in our young people? I did a presentation one time with the African Poetry Theater, and I asked 3 important questions. I said, how many people belong to an all-black or African-centered organization? Almost everybody raised their hand. I said, in that organization, how many people have a youth component to it, where we teach the children the tenets of the organization. Probably 3 people raised their hand. I said, and in these organizations, how many teach self-defense? Nobody raised their hand. So my question was, then how serious are our organizations about what it is we say we about? How serious are we to moving the community forward if us, as the organized, don't have programs to teach the children these things that we spitting or kicking, lack of better words, try to look for big words. If we're not passing on this knowledge and information to the youth in an organized, structured play, what are we doing? If we don't have a self-defense mechanism where we're teaching our children martial arts and taking them to the range, teach them self-defense. The Yuruku is doing it. They got their kids on the range. Why aren't we doing this? Then if we're not implementing the 2 most important things in any community survival, passing on the teachings and legacies of our culture, and being on task and code to protect and preserve this culture, everything is rhetoric. It all becomes rhetoric. It stopped being rhetoric when we start to take action and implement application. So this is how we fight. This is how we resist. And we only fight because we know we're going to win. But as warriors of the culture, we have 2 enemies. We have 2 enemies we have to fight. We know that the European is helping on this homogenized society to eliminate us and indoctrinate everybody with Eurocentric thinking. This is how you make a slave. You break a man's will. You break his connection to his culture, his lineage, his legacy. Tell them everything about him is wrong, everything about them is right. This is the enemy. This is why we must resist their misinformation system that they call school. This is why we gotta resist the images that they show us in mass media and in communication. But then there's the other enemy, that internal enemy that exists within us, the one that tells us there's no use in fighting, that we can't win. We have to conquer that enemy, that seed of doubt and fear that's been placed in us by our open enemy. And that inner fight, that's the hardest fight right there. Because again, we have to resist a lot of the foods. Too much sugar, too much salt, too much caffeine, nicotine, too much drugs, too much of anything throws you off balance. We want to practice Mayat. We want to stay in tune. I'm not telling you to cut the meat out and be vegan. I'm not telling you eliminate sugar completely from your diet. If you could, that's fine. Because again, we all work in progress. But we have to be mindful. And that's where the real fight comes in. The real fight comes in every day when we wake up and know that we're on a mission with a purpose. We were born on purpose with a purpose, and we got to stand in that. And if we are who we say we are, then we need to act like at every chance we get and support everybody who share the same mindset and idea. So again, family, with that, I'm your brother Tad, and I want to encourage you. I implore you to go out and fight, because we can win this. I want you to tap into the warrior that exists inside of you. I want you to tap into the Fannie Lou Hamer and the Ida B. Wells. I want you to tap into the Sojourner Truths and Harriet Tubmans. I want you to tap into the Queen Mother Moore and Dr. Frances Cress Welsons. I want you to tap into the Nat Turner, if you could, the Dr. Khaled, the intellectual warriors like Dr. Clark and Hubert Harrison and Dr. Ben, Asa Hilliard, and so many others. Because we are blessed. We are blessed and we are fortunate. Our brother Ray had named so many dope people with their programs. Empress Chi and our brother Darren Muhammad and our brother Ayo Kamathi. Some of you may know him as the Irritated Genie, which I will say this as I close. I was a part of many organizations in my tenure in the 20-something years that I came into the movement. I will always give props and respect to 2 people who were stellar examples of leadership. And that's our brother Vernon Wells of the African Village and Ayo Kamathi of the Straight Black Pride Movement. When you talk about leadership, integrity, commitment, I told Irritated Genie one time, So when we first met, I said, yo, you remind me of Dr. Collier. His level of commitment. We traveled around the country together, and I tell you, we stayed at each other's houses, and 24/7, he don't turn it off. Who you see is who he is. He's definitely committed. And our brother, Minister Vernon Wells of the African Village. Humility, compassion, and love. That thing that's missing out of our community that black people really need, he exemplifies it. Every chance he gets, he gives an encouraging word. Any opportunity that you may benefit from, he puts you onto it. And this is what we need, family. We need our warrior class, and we need our brothers and sisters that's going to demonstrate real, genuine black love. You know, so I definitely had to give them brothers their props, and I'd be remiss if I would salute my sister Keisha, my big sister, who I get so much knowledge and information from, who is like, I think blood couldn't make us no closer. That's my sister from another mister. So family, hopefully you were inspired by something you heard today, and it's your turn to go out and inspire others. So y'all stay up, stay blessed, and stay true. And remember, no matter how hard things may seem right now, there's always better days ahead. Thank you.
And for the listening audience, Better Days Fitness with Brother Tad.
Yeah.
Bam! He will get you in shape if you're looking to do the right thing. Better Days Fitness with Brother Tad. I saw him do his work.
Yes.
So give Brother Tad a great big hand. And what we're going to do now, we're going to come with a question and answer for a couple of minutes. The first one would be from the Zoom audience. A question and answer for Brother Tad. Anybody from Zoom? Going once.
Yeah,
Going twice.
I'm Mikhail, my brother, and I enjoyed everything you said.
Peace. Thank you, brother.
What do you recommend for a person that's eating style? I know you said you talking about like walking and drinking more water.
Yes.
Doing other things, because I talked to some people. They say you should eat meat, chicken, steak, and then vegetables, and then do all the rest of that stuff too. Then some people say do plant-based, and then drink water and exercise. And some people go vegan. I ask you after what you said. What do you have a suggestion or on how a person to try to regain their health or stay healthy?
Yes. I'm a certified personal trainer, right? And before I train many of my clients, I always recommend that you consult with your doctor. Know your blood type. Know what works for you, know what doesn't work for you. Because for some people, they don't get the proper amount of protein through plant-based diets because of our genetics. Our lineage, our family history, all that plays a big part in our development. So you may be a person who needs to eat steak or chicken. Some people may not be able to do it. So the first thing I would suggest is that you do consult with your doctor on, if you can eat, how would meat play out and incorporate it in your diet. I will say you can't go wrong with plant-based. But here's the thing, meat, chicken, particularly chicken and beef, has more proteins than plants do. I believe plants have, any plant that has protein, like let's say broccoli and chickpeas, the most they'll have is 22 chain amino acids in the protein, as to where meat has 24. A lot of times many people will say, oh, we're not supposed to eat cows, we don't see cows eating meat. I ask them, well, let me see you get down with a cow and eat grass. Our bodies digest food differently. But single ingredient foods is always the way to go, and learn portion control. Portion control is very important. However, you can't go wrong with water. Drink about 1 ounce per pound of your body weight, right? So let's say you weigh 200 pounds, you want about 200 ounces of water a day. Not too much, and definitely not too little. Because what many people don't know, as I age and the things I've learned, is that dehydration contributes to black men getting hemorrhoids too. You know, as we age, some brothers get hemorrhoids, and that's due to dehydration. So it's very important that we do get water. You can't go wrong with fruits and vegetables. We have to be mindful of the starches, the rice and the potatoes. Those are carbs. Those are healthy carbs because you have two types of carbs. You have your complex carbs and your simple carbs. The complex carbs are good for you. Complex carbs are good for you because you'll hear people talk about carbohydrates, but that's your body's preferred source of fuel. Your body gets a lot of energy from carbs and fats, but you've got to be mindful of fats, right? But simple carbs are sugars and cakes and things like that. Those are simple carbs. Those are the carbs you want to stay away from. Complex carbs is what you want, all right? And in terms of fat, you want to eat that sparingly. You want monounsaturated fat like an avocado, which is an excellent fruit. Avocado is good, but be mindful because fats have 9 calories per gram. So the more that you eat, the more calories you have. You don't want to go into a caloric surplus. You don't want to have too many calories because that adds on weight. Because all our visceral fat is, like visceral and subcutaneous. Subcutaneous is the fat like our love handles and stuff. Visceral is the fat around our organs. Not to be confused with dietary fats. I don't want to get too deep. But fat is unused energy. That's all fat is. And calories is a measurement of energy. That's all calories is. Calories is a measurement of energy in the human body. So if you take too much calories, it converts to fat because that is energy. So you want to be mindful of that. But again, talk to your doctor. Talk to your doctor. Have this conversation with your doctor and let them talk to a nutritionist about what's best for you. All right? Did that answer your question, Brother Michael?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, my brother.
I'm glad I could help, bro. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Did an excellent job and the issues you raised and the solution, our solution. I want to continue on the nutrition. A lot of these doctors and these nutritionists, they are not in sync with a lot of the Bible.
Right.
I mean, they're not things that you made that say, you know what, you have to study. Why you going along with the Medical Association of Pharmaceutical Association? They won't buck that.
Right.
And there's new information, and they won't just stay away from that. But what else? And you mentioned eat your blood type. What is eat your blood type?
Well, when you go to a trusted doctor and nutritionist, they'll let you know, like, what types of food will have an adverse effect on your body. Like, let's say gout. I had gout before, right? This was when I was in my early 40s. I had the gout. And I'm like, the gout? And they sent me to the nutritionist. And what I did learn about what gout is gout is crystals on your joints. That's where all the pain comes from. It's uric acid buildup. When your body eats certain foods that has a chemical called purine in it, it metabolizes and it turns into these crystals. It turns to uric acid. Those uric acids form one. But now there's foods like spinach, Greek yogurt, mushrooms, steak. A lot of these things have purine in it. It has a chemical called purine. And based on your body, how your body metabolizes food, determine whether you'll get gout or not. And it also depends on your water intake. Because at the level I had it at, the doctor said he was surprised I didn't have kidney stones. But I told him I drink almost a gallon of water a day. And he said, that explains it, because what it does is it flushes that uric acid out your system. Though you may have crystals. But what I did learn was good for the gout. Beet juice and celery juice almost instantly knocks it out. Fresh squeezed beet juice and celery juice does help. It washes those crystals off your joints. And these are things we can do because everything we need is already here. Because again, this is something that we can control. Our diet, what we ingest, the things we watch, things we listen to, the people we listen to. That's the internal fight we have. And again, like I said, I was 280 pounds. You know, so that was a challenge. Just for me, walking was a challenge. My thighs used to rub together, put holes in my jeans. I was blaming white folks. I was like, yo, they keep making these skinny jeans for white people, man. These jeans too tight. It wasn't jeans too tight. I was getting too big. You know, and that's what it was. So these are, and again, I'm solution centered. I'm of the mind. And I hope our Zoom people take this too. I always tell people, if what you know don't solve your problems, then you don't know you don't know nothing.
Wow.
If what you know don't solve your problems, then you don't know nothing.
Wow.
I learned this from Dr. McIntosh years ago. I seen him speak, and he talked about useless information. And then he talked about, he asked everybody to finish the sentence. He said, 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, and everybody had to finish it. Everybody could finish it. He said, now why do you need to know that? Why do everybody know that? That was useless. But then he asked his son about what was going on in China in this relationship to Africa. And almost nobody knew. We're getting bombarded with useless information, and we got to be careful of that. It reminds me of Cheers. Y'all ever used to watch the television show Cheers?
Sure.
Remember the mailman, Cliff Clavin? He used to sit there all day. He knew all this useless information. There's about 84 different species of arachnid, you know?
Yeah.
And, all right, so why we need to know about spiders? Useless information. And a lot of times in this movement, I've noticed a lot of useless information. People would love to say how they read the books, or they met with this scholar or that scholar, and they sat at this person's feet and that person's feet. But they still can't even take care of themselves.
And you know, and you mentioned that there's a lot of useful idiots that they promote in the black community.
Yes, definitely.
Useful idiots.
Yes.
And also, you mentioned about what's his name? Ayato. He talks about.
Ayo, come on.
Yeah, he talks heavily about the homosexual in the black community. And now they're trying to say, well, it's rooted. It's been found in Africa as well. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. And we got to be mindful, because like I always remind people, that's the first civilization, and a lot of people, what I realized in my study, because I'm big on critical thinking for yourself. You know, I always tell people, think for yourself, but work for the group. Think for yourself, but work for the group. And unfortunately, we get indoctrinated with groupthink, and we adopt rhetoric as opposed to doing independent study and research. You know, imagine if Dr. Clark didn't think for himself and just stuck with the group. Imagine if Malcolm didn't think for himself and just stuck with the group. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We have to think outside the box and not be afraid to challenge the status quo. So when people say that, we have to ask the question, who is saying this, and what's their association?
And where their sources.
Where's their sources?
Absolutely. I say the same.
A lot of people have an agenda. I have an agenda. Anytime we speak, we have an agenda. I'm communicating the point that I want people to see things my way. I may be right, I may be wrong. Like I said earlier, please, research, don't take my word. You may find something I may benefit from, something I may have missed. Nonetheless, I encourage people to think, because what's keeping us enslaved is our inability to think critically and for ourselves. You know, this is very important, and we see it with the 2 candidates right now. I tell people, I never thought I'd be in a position where I'm agreeing 100% with a white dude. You know, but here it is. I didn't vote for Trump before, but I mean, much of what I'm against, he's against. Much of what Kamala is for, I'm against. So I don't play identity politics when it comes to that. Because if it was 2 black people anyway, we still talking about 2 black people trying to uphold white supremacy and keep this power in place when we talk the elections. So when people come with homosexuality starting in Africa, and I question where you get that source from? Because chances are it's probably a homosexual African right now.
Absolutely.
Because ask them, did their grandmother practice it? Did their grandfather practice that? Did they support it? Tell the truth and shame the devil? No, they didn't. But we get indoctrinated with European ideas, because with Europeans, anything goes.
And then when you seek this information out, right, you don't seek it out of jeopardy. You seek out what you want to find anyhow.
Right, confirmation bias. You only seeking out things that will confirm your position, as opposed to something that's an opposite of your position, just so you can tear it apart. I always tell people, I read books by people I don't like, just to see what their argument is, so I can take it apart. Sometimes we agree with people we don't necessarily agree with.
Absolutely.
They may have a point.
Absolutely, but when it comes to the vaccine, I'm totally with it, because when we're with this other stuff, I got to really examine, like the 2025 program.
Right. To which that is not on the platform. Right. That was already denounced. Yeah.
Okay, any other question? Any other question from the floor? Zoom audience, you got a question? Any other questions? Question?
You had 10 points. I didn't hear anything about internationalism concerning what's going on in the Sahel region in Africa, and how, as African Americans, we can amalgamate with that new paradigm shift that's happening.
I want, and that's a good point. I didn't go international with it because I want people to start where they are. People who may be new to this information, people who may find some of this stuff hard to grasp. What I realize is that when we're communicating with the people, a lot of times we're preaching to the choir, but what about the people we're trying to convert and get them to see the righteousness of our cause? Not just by what we're doing, but what do I also suggest? People fight that demon inside themselves to be better. So just start eating right, walking more, challenging things. And then once you get on that, once you start getting in that flow, start thinking communal, then you start thinking out abroad. Because unfortunately, people haven't even found self-love within themselves yet to even be concerned about our brothers and sisters around the world.
Absolutely.
Okay, Zoom audience? Zoom audience? Okay, going once,
Where you going?
going twice. Floor, anybody from the floor? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, give Brother Tad a great hand. And if you're in the New York area and you want Better Days Fitness to come and get you in shape, bam, Tad will do it. So give him a great big hand. Thank you very much. And he will be on tomorrow on Dead Old Black Talk with Keisha, Brother Black, Sister Marba, a.k.a. Marcia.
And go down.
So tune in and let's get ready. Give him a great big hand. Thank you very much.
Dr. Mumford, how you